Hello, everyone, and welcome to All Blaze No Glory, the podcast. Sorry, it's been a while. I've been through some things, and we'll get to that in the course of the podcast. Today, I am drinking Northern Monk Game On Hazy Pale Ale. The good people at Northern Monk in Leeds especially made this pale ale for the local women's team there, who are an up-and-coming women's team called the Leeds Roses. Anyway, that's a side note. I'm here to talk about several different things. Firstly, why I've been away. I'm going to be open and honest, perhaps inspired by the Cold Water Dips episode. I had some mental health difficulties and felt really low, didn't feel like doing podcasts, didn't feel like being here really, but managed to power through and managed to get there, and that was a result of some of the other things I'm going to talk to you about later on as the podcast develops. It's weird doing these podcasts when you're talking to yourself because, bizarrely, I don't write down a script, I just kind of let it come out. So it kind of comes out like a weird one-way conversation where I'm talking to myself, which is good because no one can argue with me, but bad in other ways. So I suppose, to cut to the chase, I just mentioned my mental health there. One of the things that you may or may not know from following me is that I am actually involved in ice hockey. I'm a coach of the Caledonia Steel Queens women's ice hockey team, which was first initiated as Scotland's only university women ice hockey team. I also, this year, at the start of the year, coached the Edinburgh Eagles university ice hockey team, which is players from the Edinburgh universities can play for. So that's Napier, Heriot and Edinburgh, as well as some college courses qualify for it. And some courses maybe in Kirkcaldy and things. It depends, because there is a St Andrews team as to which rink you're closer to. So that is where I'm coming from. Well, that's what I've been doing. Sorry, yeah, basically everything got a bit much. I came back from my honeymoon. I had an amazing time on my honeymoon, the best time on my honeymoon, and there was just a lot of pressure, a lot of games all packed into one bit, a lot more game time, and also because of the way ice time's done, and this is through no fault of anybody, ice time is very scarce in Scotland. It's quite difficult to get. In terms of Edinburgh, there's about 7 or 8 amateur sort of teams that are vying for one ice rink's time in Murrayfield Ice Arena, and so the Steel Queens would train at 9:45 on a Wednesday, followed by the Eagles at 11, and then I'd obviously have the late night, have to tidy up and stuff, and then into work the next morning. It just became too much, so I stepped back from coaching the Eagles, and this is one of these things where we say, like, if you are going through a rough time, then don't be afraid to like reach out to your pals or your friends or your teammates, or if you're a coach or whatever, to those working with you, because the support I got wasn't unsurprising, but it certainly gave me a boost in the right direction towards the road to recovery. Now, let's be honest, once you've got mental health problems, they never really fully go away. You just have to learn to deal with them and cope with them, and I'm not trivialising them, but they don't go away. So you need to learn to have coping mechanisms, you need to learn to feel happier, and you need to learn to take care of yourself. And that was where I was going wrong. I wasn't taking care of myself. I was doing coaching, then I was going home and having fish and chips or whatever, not fish and chips from the chippy, but like, you know, fish and oven chips or sausage and chips or something after training, after having had sandwiches and everything before training, a big lunch, all these sorts of things. And essentially I wasn't taking care of myself that way either, and my blood pressure just about broke the armband, to say the least, the last time I was at the doctor. So take care of yourself, make sure you're checking yourself, and if you're not hearing from one of your mates, or one of your mates is struggling, just ask them, because to be honest with you, one of the captains for the Steel Queens asked me a few times if I was okay, and if I was struggling, I was to say. And to be honest with you, if they hadn't said that, I'm not sure I would ever have made the decision to do the right thing and step back a little bit from the late night coaching, which was killing me in the morning, because the lack of sleep is another thing that affects your mental health. So, yeah, talk to people. Make sure that if you need help, then talk to them, and if you feel someone needs help, yeah, they might be a little offended if you say if you're all right, but just saying "Are you all right?" I mean, is nothing. No one really is offended by that. So just say "You're all right. Doing too much. Got enough on your plate." And if someone asks you that, don't be afraid to say yes. I've got far too much on, and I need to cut this out, and I need help, because people are willing to help you. Because at the end of the day, even if you cut back, you're better being there doing something than not being there at all. So anyway, a little bit of I think they call it a TED talk on that, but that's what I was going through, which is part of the reason there's been no podcasts in ages. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is a little bit self-indulgent, is the Caledonia Steel Queens ice hockey team. So Caledonia Steel Queens were formed in 2018. Officially, they were actually had their first taster sessions in 2017. At the tail end of that in end of November, start of December. Following that, we managed to get a nice slot at Coatbridge. Now, most of the girls are from Edinburgh's universities. We now have a lot of girls from Glasgow as well, which is fantastic, and a couple from other universities out with those sort of two main catchment areas. Yeah, so they started in 2018, and the view was just to get a hockey team going for women in that area, and to make it a university team. Kind of made it a bit easier because there's a lot of sort of red tape with registrations and stuff like that. Now it's not anybody's fault. It's just the way it is, and university was the way forward. Now the club started off, the first training session had 7 people at it, and we had half the ice in Murrayfield that night, because we were sharing ice with the aforementioned Edinburgh Eagles, who were good enough to give us the end ice. It had 7 people, so it was nowhere near enough to actually cover half the ice in terms of what we normally charge people. So that went okay. There wasn't a great deal we could do because we didn't have a goalie and all that sort of stuff. The following week we got 11 plus a goalie. The goalie was actually a male friend of mine who said he would come in, so they had somebody to shoot at. And that was quite successful. But the other thing I'm going to say about this thing, if you think you're doing something and you think there's a love for it, give it a chance, because I could have quite easily just packed my bag and went, I'm not doing this, I'm not going to try and make this work. But I stuck at it, and by the end of January we played our first game, and there was 3 male guests in the team. Chris Tongue, who is a well-known Edinburgh Eagles player, Zach Abrams again playing out, and then we had a male goalie, as we had just recruited a goalie, but she'd only had 1 training session, so we thought it was a bit dangerous to put her in straight away. But beyond that, we had 12 other skaters and other ones who weren't available for that day, so we started to have the makings of a team. And as things progressed, we got to Nationals that year, which is the annual tournament held by the British University Ice Hockey Association. And we got to the semi-final of the lowest tier in the mixed nationals, so we were playing against males. And it was a tough tournament, but we persevered, and we lost against my good friend Nick Ivel's team, and in a great spirited game, and it was cracking. The girls all really enjoyed themselves, and there's a lot of newer girls there and what have you. But progressing beyond that, we then played in 2018 in Nottingham in the women's nationals, which was just for female only players, and managed to get to the final of that and lose in a penalty shootout, which, considering where we come from, was an absolute amazing achievement, given that we'd only had 7 players at the end of December to get to, I think it was May, to get to the finals of that tournament by May was fantastic. The next thing that happened to us really made it work, because I mentioned we were training in Coatbridge. Now, nothing wrong with Coatbridge. The staff there are some of the best staff I've ever dealt with in any sports facility. Run about after you, offer you to loan sticks, pucks, whatever we needed. They were helping us to make sure that this worked. But because of it was a Monday night at whatever time, and because there's no real transport like you have with Edinburgh. It was very difficult for girls to get there, so we were having to carpool and chuck things in your car. And I mean, my car got wrecked and scratched and everything, and I try to put squeeze kits in. So Murrayfield Ice Rink, as it was then known, it's now Murrayfield Ice Arena, made a point of giving us ice time, and that essentially led to what has happened now. So the Caledonia Steel Queens now, having played in 2 mixed nationals, which is like men and women sort of mixed teams, and as you go up the tiers to the top tier, it's mainly men in the check-in tier, but in the non-check-in tiers there's women throughout, because it's there's some amazingly talented women in the BIHA. Essentially the crux of the matter was that we got to the final in 2000, final of tier 5. So we went up a division, we got to the final of it, and we lost sadly again in a penalty shootout. But 2 weeks later in 2019, the Steel Queens won the first ever British University women's title for them. And we are now 3-peat champions, because we lost 2 years because of COVID, so who knows what would have happened in those days. Every final's been against Nottingham, because they're always quite a strong side. But something special happened this year in Nationals, and again, I'll tell you about the not giving up on this. So I've always made a point that if we can get really good players, that's great. If we can get players that are brand new to the sport, that's equally as great. And I know people sitting there going, yeah, you're talking out the other side of your mouth. I'm not. We managed to put a B team in Nationals this year. We managed to get 2 teams down there to play in that Nationals. I think throughout the course of the season, I've not calculated exactly, but there was over 40 girls played in various matches. We had others that came and trained with us and got a bit of experience doing that. And it was, what's amazing is, I'm looking back at it, and I'd love to get the stats properly, but I reckon that the club has now introduced over 40 to 50 women in its small time to their first taste of ice hockey. And that's what I'm saying to you. If you want to do something in sport, you think there's a need for a sport, whether it's female, male, mixed, whatever it may be, go do it with everything you've got. And there will be people to help you, because without the people that helped me along the way, the Steel Queens wouldn't exist. So yeah, we're 3-peat champions, but we're also responsible for so many players getting their first taste of ice hockey, so many players improving on ice hockey, and it's just as exciting to see us score really fantastic goals with the A team as it was to see the B team players blocking shots and lifting sticks and stuff. And despite the fact that the B team essentially ended at the other end of the table, it was an incredible experience, and one that, after everything I've been through with my mental health and having a bit of a scare that I had the dreaded Rona just before the tournament and whether I could go or not, it was perhaps the most uplifting experience, certainly in sport for me, of all time. So have a go at it. Now, just while we're on the Steel Queens and a bit of shameless pandering and a bit of shameless self-promotion and what have you, the Steel Queens are hoping to try and enter the WNIHL League next year, which is the women's league for Britain, essentially. It's run by English Ice Hockey Association. There is one Scottish team currently in it, Solway, which is Dumfries. Are sort of frenemies, I guess, because we've played them a few times and had some really great games with them. So we are hoping to enter that, so now we can expand beyond the university game. And this is with a view, not because we're getting big-headed because we've won 3 times or whatever. It's all to do with development of players. So we now have players who've been through uni and can no longer compete in university hockey because they're no longer eligible. And rather than them just playing the odd friendly here and there, we would like to have a place for them to play competitively, and with the view of developing the game for Team GB, and just for themselves, because at the end of the day, they love it, and some players have that competitive edge, and playing friendlies ain't what they want to do. So there will be some GoFundMe's coming out, and I hope you guys maybe spare a quid or two, even if it's £1. It doesn't matter. Like, it's £1 more than we ever had. So that's enough on the Caledonia Steel Queens. it's enough of me self-indulgently rambling. But that's where we're at with me and with my coaching endeavours. So other things to look forward to. Softball season starts next week. On the 2nd of May, I think, is our first game. I'll need to double check that so I don't miss it. Down at Warriston Playing Fields. I think I've got permission from the wife, despite the fact we just got a new puppy. So that should be down there. So if you're interested in softball, go to watch it, go to play it. Just get in touch with Edinburgh Softball League on Facebook, or I think you can find an email address, or if you Google the website, and they'll be able to help you with that. Great game if you're feeling like you're unfit but you want some kind of physical activity without not downplaying how tough softball actually is. But it'll help you get your fitness up, but also you won't feel like you're going to pass out by doing sprints or something like that. So yeah, get in touch with them if you're interested in that. So a couple other things to talk about. We've had the NFL draft, and I didn't do any kind of prep for the draft, and because this year, as I say, have been completely mental. But I just wanted to talk about a couple of teams that I think are really done really good things that's going to be exciting. And I think that the Houston Texans are going to be much more exciting than they've ever been in all the time I've watched American football. They drafted CJ Stroud, who's obviously a new quarterback. I know they've got Davis Mills, but they've now got CJ Stroud, who's a highly thought after prospect. But they then went and flipped it and traded back up to get Will Anderson, who arguably is one of the best defensive prospects in the draft. So they already started off strong there. The rest of the draft seems to have been pretty strong for them, adding weapons and what have you. So yeah, I think the Texans are going to be one of the most improved teams this year. I know Carolina have all the free agents and that, but I think the Houston Texans are ones not to be slept on this year. I also think that the Detroit Lions, for me, are going to be intriguing this year, and I think the Detroit Lions are going to make the playoffs this year. So that's my prediction for the year. I said last year I have a soft spot for the Lions. I really do. I kind of hope they keep Goff for a bit whilst their other quarterback is developing. But yeah, I'm quite excited to see what the Detroit Lions could do. So that's all I'm going to say in the draft, because to be honest with you, I don't know enough about it this year. I've not taken the time to study it like I did last year. So that's all. The other thing I wanted to talk to you guys about, and this is something sort of inner monologue that has been bothering me thinking about in the car, is Stuart Hogg has obviously announced he's retiring from rugby altogether. And I've blown hot and cold with Stuart Hogg at times, but I think on balance all of us can say that he is on Scottish Rugby's Mount Rushmore as one of the top prospects. He's not a prospect anymore. One of the top players that Scotland certainly had in the professional era, and perhaps in all time. He got to 100 caps. I actually kind of feel it's a little bit disappointing that he's retiring after the World Cup, because he's not going to break the cap record and be the most capped Scottish male of all time. But 100 caps is amazing. Bit disappointing it happened in the Ireland game that he got injured and ended up missing the Italy game, which would have been a nice kind of swan song to the Six Nations for him, hopefully, if him and Finn Russell had played. Perhaps it wouldn't have been quite as squeaky bum as it was if he was playing in Finn Russell. But anyway, that's that. So I was thinking about, what are Hoggy's future professional plans? I don't know, he might have announced this, so if he has, please don't get on me, I've not noticed. But the first thing I thought is, with all the grooming that he's done, that either he could get it could be a cover boy for something like one of these fashion mags, GQ, is it the male's one? And then I thought, that's not Hoggy. He is, he likes to look after himself in the looks department, but that seems a bit kind of not enough action for him. The next thing it got me thinking is, he's got that award-winning smile now and all the rest of it. Is he going to go and work for Remax or similar? I think he could. I think he'd be quite good at selling houses. I mean, he's got all the credentials for trying to sell Scotland season passes and all this stuff over the years in the various interviews. and constantly saying sold out BT Murrayfield without knowing if it's sold out or not. So he could maybe do something along those lines. But then it occurred to me, it's like, maybe he should stay in sport. And this is something that, if you're an American football fan as well as a rugby fan, I welcome your comments on this. But I've always wondered why in American football, so essentially American football, you have all your roster, you have a 53-man roster for the season. And American football teams tend to have one kicker and one punter on their team. I've always wondered why you didn't get someone who could do both. Not so you'd save a roster space, but then you'd essentially have a backup as well. So, for example, Stuart Hogg can kick out of hand probably better than most American footballers can. I know it's a rugby ball, but it's a similar shape and stuff. He could punt. I think he could definitely punt. The other thing is, and I know at times he's been slagged off for his defence, but the other thing is, he's going to be a punter who, if there's a bit of a break from a return, that he can perhaps smash somebody, because we've seen him make really good tackles over the years. I think he made one of the best try-saving tackles I've ever seen. It was on Mike Brown in Murrayfield. I was at the goal. I was watching from behind. I thought for all days England had scored. England still won, but so yeah, I think that's one. He can definitely punt. Can he kick from the deck? Yeah, he used to take Scotland's big long kick. So again, he can kick from the deck. So I was thinking, why doesn't say, we'll just pick a team, Las Vegas Raiders, because I could see Hoggy fitting in Las Vegas. No, he's a family guy. Let's say somewhere more family oriented, Green Bay. Why don't they pick someone like Stuart Hogg, pay him an exorbitant amount of money to come and punt and goal kick for them, or be a kicker. I know it's not called goal kicking in American football, and then have another guy who can do that, and then you've got two roster spots, and then I've seen games where teams haven't been able to kick because their kickers got injured, and they've started having to go for 2-point conversions. Try and do 4th and 10s because they're at the 20-yard line because they've not got a kicker. If you have two people like that, you've got a bit of injury cover as well, and I just don't understand the logic behind it. But I do think that I don't know. Stuart Hogg's not going to take career advice from me. I'm fairly positive, but I would love to see Stuart Hogg continuing on in sport in some capacity. But whatever he does, Stuart Hogg, I just hope you have a great career. And thank you for everything you've done for Scottish rugby. I know at times I've been quite vocal and been disappointed in some of the stuff that maybe you've done, but thank you for everything you've done for Scottish rugby. Another couple of obviously retirement news. Greg Laidlaw seems like he's staying in Japan to coach. That'll be interesting to see how he does it. It's a new developing league. Give him a chance for a bit more freedom, perhaps, a bit more responsibility. I could see him coming being a coach in the Scotland setup at some point, maybe even the coach in the Scotland setup. I could see him being a very successful coach, because for all these drawbacks where maybe people said he was slow and stuff, he was a very, very intelligent rugby player, and is always very, very good with people. He's good with media and all that sort of stuff. So I would like to see Greg Laidlaw do well in coaching. McInally obviously living out his dream of being a pilot. Perhaps his rugby career got in the way of him being a pilot much earlier, so good luck to him. I'm not entirely sure, I don't know who he's going to work for, but it would be quite cool one day to say you got taken wherever you got taken by not only the captain of the plane, but also the former Scotland captains. That'd be quite cool. It's just a little bit of a catch up and just a little bit of talking nonsense for your entertainment or lack of. I'll be back. I've got a couple of things lined up. I'm going to be doing a ringette podcast. Ringette is a kind of form of ice sport. It's played with a ring, as you might have imagined from the name. It's largely from Quebec in Canada, but it's played across Canada, played across Europe. So I've got a couple of people lined up to talk about that. I've got a Canadian from Saskatchewan and a Finn to talk to about that, to talk about the European game, to talk about the Canadian game, how popular it is, how you shoot, how you pass, how you play the game. Also got Alex Carmichael, an Oxford University ice hockey player, but he also plays korfball, who's going to come in and talk to us about korfball and how he got into that and what it's all about. Because korfball, incidentally, for those of you who were at university, you've probably seen it. It's like a kind of like a netball, but it's got like a basket instead of an actual net. And it's played, I think, 8-on-8. So I almost did join the korfball team, and then until I realised how much sort of time the ice hockey would take up. And at that point, I was also had visions that I could be a rock star with my band Oliwa, which, funnily enough, never came to pass. Probably largely because the lack of the talent in the group was me. But yeah, I'm interested to hear about korfball, so we're going to do that. I'm hoping that we will get one of the Scottish Rugby Blog podcast guys on to talk about potential Rugby World Cup people we'd like to see capped during the summer. Not necessarily people that need to be in the squad, but people that need to get a look in. I'm fairly sure Stafford McDowell's name is going to be mentioned in there, among others. It's not just about who would be capped, but who we can maybe bring back in to give it a shot in that. So I'm hoping to do that. If not, I'll maybe just grab someone else from rugby and talk about that. So these are some of the things that are coming up. I'd like to thank you for listening. If you've got this far, well done. If you switched off after I started ranting about mental health and being maybe a little bit self-indulgent about the Steel Queens, then fair enough, I understand that too. You won't be hearing this apology, but there you go. So thanks so much, guys. Take care, and I hope you'll tune in next time. Cheers.